A sudden weight drop in a resident is one of the fastest ways to trigger widespread panic during a state survey. I'm Mr. Betts, a consulting nurse. Our goal here is to elevate compliance training for skilled nursing facility teams by digging into the actual mechanics of federal regulations. Today, we are dissecting one of the most heavily scrutinized tags in the State Operations Manual, F692, Assisted Nutrition and Hydration. When the survey team arrives, clinical staff often focus entirely on the scale. However, history shows that facilities are frequently cited for F692 even when they have technically corrected a weight loss, while others remain compliant despite a resident's continued decline. F692 compliance rests on the integrity of the clinical management workflow rather than the biological stability of the resident. We refer to the belief that a negative biological trend equals a deficiency as the outcome fallacy. The State Operations Manual explicitly dictates that weight loss and dehydration are not, by themselves, sufficient to support noncompliance at F692. Surveyors are looking for a breakdown in your structural systems. They want to see how the facility responded when that clinical decline was identified. A biological failure, like the body losing mass despite intervention, is often a natural part of the aging or disease process. A clinical management failure occurs when the staff recognizes that weight loss and fails to follow a professional standard of response. This animated scale illustrates the true focus of a state audit. Surveyors are weighing your facility's responsiveness and documentation rigor. Proactive process serves as the primary defense against citations when biological outcomes decline. To comply with F692, a facility must ensure a resident maintains acceptable parameters of nutritional status, as defined by CMS. In 2016, the Federal Register published updates that altered exactly how surveyors measure that status during an inspection. As you see, CMS eliminated using serum protein levels, like albumin, as a definitive nutritional measure. Instead, focus shifted to tracking electrolyte balance and fluid intake. Facilities must update routine lab monitoring. Failing to monitor and respond to electrolyte imbalances will trigger a deficiency. This places a specific burden on the registered dietitian and floor nurses to coordinate on daily intake logs and basic metabolic panels. Relying on outdated metrics like albumin levels creates a false sense of security. True compliance requires tracking the exact parameters CMS now mandates. Securing a defense against process-based citations requires implementing a continuous clinical loop. This flowchart outlines the required steps. Phase 1, assess nutritional status. Phase 2, identify specific risk factors. Phase 3, implement interventions consistent with professional standards. Phase 4, monitor the resident's response. Phase 5 closes the loop by modifying the approach if the initial intervention fails. A surveyor will cite F692 the moment they find a break in this chain. If you intervene but fail to monitor, you fail the audit. Demonstrating a closed, documented loop proves the facility did not neglect the resident, regardless of the resident's final weight. A common point of failure in nutrition audits is the use of the resident refused chart note. Staff often feel a sense of security when documenting a refusal, assuming the resident's right to refuse treatment protects the facility from an F692 deficiency. The State Operations Manual has an explicit rule for this scenario. Honoring a refusal does not absolve the facility of its responsibility to meet the resident's nutritional needs. When a resident refuses, the nurse has immediate obligations. First, the nurse must document educating the resident on the specific clinical risks of their refusal. Second, the facility must actively offer appealing, clinically appropriate alternatives to the refused item. If a resident refuses an unpalatable nutritional supplement, the staff should offer ice cream, broth, or accommodate a specific food request from the resident. Finally, the interdisciplinary team must revise the comprehensive care plan under tag F656 to reflect both the refused treatment and the new intervention. Honoring a resident's autonomy requires more rigorous clinical documentation and care plan agility, not less. Beyond solid nutrition, we need to address the specific hydration requirements embedded within F692. When surveying hydration, inspectors use the CMS 802 matrix as their primary tool to audit facility data. This measuring beaker graphic shows the exact metric surveyors use. They flag hydration concerns when a resident takes in less than 1,500 milliliters of fluid daily. Falling below this threshold requires the facility to immediately offer preferred drinks, provide alternatives, and accurately track acceptance. Missing that 1,500 milliliter threshold acts as a surveyor's spotlight. It immediately triggers a deep dive audit into the facility's intervention documentation. Applying this regulatory theory to everyday nursing practice comes down to writing bulletproof chart notes. Look at this standard chart note. Resident refused ensure. Weight down 2 pounds. This note guarantees a citation. It fails the F692 process audit because it ignores the assessment loop. It documents the biological outcome and the refusal, but completely omits the facility's clinical response. Now examine this fully compliant note for the exact same scenario. Resident refused ensure. Educated on risk of weight loss. Offered Magic Cup as alternative. Resident accepted. RD notified to update care plan. The first half of this note proves the nurse provided clinical education to the resident regarding the risk of their refusal. The middle of the note proves a viable alternative was offered and accepted, successfully closing the intervention gap. The final sentence proves the interdisciplinary team was triggered to update the comprehensive care plan to match the new intervention. Compliant charting must always answer why an event happened and what the facility did next, rather than merely recording what happened. The F692 regulation audits clinical management, penalizing systemic neglect rather than unavoidable human biology. A resident can experience severe weight loss, and the facility can still achieve 100% compliance if the process loop is demonstrably closed. Administrators and directors of nursing should mandate immediate training for floor staff. Never chart a refusal without documenting the attached education and the alternative offered. If this breakdown clarifies your survey risks, like and subscribe to the channel, and share this video with your clinical teams to elevate your facility-wide compliance. I'm Mr. Betts. Proactive, process-driven care effectively protects the facility while ensuring high-quality resident outcomes.